What's going on, everyone? I have a very important filing to talk about. This one is DTC-2021-011, and it's relating to confidential information, market disruption events, and other changes. There's also one out of the FICC and the NSCC as well. So this does affect all of the subsidiaries of the DTCC, who is the parent company of these three right here. So the purpose of this filing, it's broken into four major parts. And I'll break it down pretty simply for you. Basically, those four parts. One is going to be revised provisions related to the confidentiality of information furnished by the participants to the DTC. Number two is going to be require that each participant maintain confidential information furnished by DTC or its affiliates in confidence and restrict use and disclosure of such info. Number three, to add officers who are allowed to declare a market disruption event, which we'll go over in a second. And also to add a new rule, Rule 38A, to address situations in which it is necessary to disconnect a participant or third-party provider or service bureau due to an imminent threat of harm to DCC participants and or other market participants. So we're going to go ahead and break each four of these down, looking at confidentiality requirements first. So basically, each of the requirements provides that the rights of DTC to inspect books and records or to be furnished with information is subject to any applicable laws or rules or regulations of regulatory bodies having jurisdiction over the participant that relate to confidentiality of records. So basically, it's all over the place. They want to update it so that way there's less conflict when rules or regulations governing a regulatory body of one participant differ from the laws applicable to the DTC. Or let's say a participant has multiple regulatory bodies whose rules conflict with one another. So they're basically creating a uniform standard for all of the participants to follow to make it a lot easier for the DTC to figure out what they can do to protect their own interests and themselves in the event we go tits up. Now, on the participant side of things, it's provided in the event of a breach of the participant confidentiality requirements, the DTC or the DTCC would be entitled to seek any temporary or permanent injunctive or other equitable relief in addition to any monetary damages. So while the first confidentiality said you pretty much have to, we're going to get everyone together under the same set of standards, this one says if you all break these standards now, we're going to be able to implement disciplinary proceedings or restrictions on services provided to you. Now, this one's pretty interesting. The market disruption event, it brings up Rule 38, which is the market disruption and force majeure rule. Now, if we look at the supernote here, it brings us to Rule 38, supernote 1, which isn't helpful, so then you have to look it up, and it basically leads us here. Now, Section 3 is titled Non-Default Losses, okay? I'm sorry, paragraph 3, and then Section 6 goes on to say, non-default losses of the plan outlines how DTC would address losses that result other than from a participant default. This section provides a roadmap to other documents that describe these events in greater detail and outlines DTC's approach to monitoring losses that can result from a non-default event. This section also includes a description of Rule 38, or the market disruption and force majeure rule that we just discussed. And Section 6.6 basically gives you an idea of what that means. So the rule was adopted at the same time as the plan and provides an additional resiliency tool designed to mitigate the risk caused by market disruption events and thereby minimize the risk of financial loss that may result from such events. The proposed rule change would remove the following phrase after the reference to the force majeure rule in the first paragraph of this section. Now that's just to describe it. So this second part of this is pretty relevant because they're going to be changing it. But basically, DTC would conform all references to the defined terms, force majeure, and market disruption event so that they appear as capitalized terms. So whenever you hear about a market disruption event, this force majeure rule comes into play. Now, the big thing with this is they want to be able to add 2 senior executives that are going to be able to determine when such event occurs. Adding these two additional officers would facilitate DTC's ability to implement its emergency procedures in the event of a market disruption event. And a market disruption event are events that lead to the suspension or limitation of trading or banking in the markets in which DTC operates. So basically, they're getting a little worried here. They're trying to get all the control for whenever we go, obviously tits up, because that's exactly what's going to happen. Finally, systems disconnect, part 4. The proposed rule change would add a new rule. This is 38A. System disconnect. Threat of significant impact to the corporation's systems. So this would address situations in where DTC determines it is necessary for DTC to disconnect a single or limited number of participants or third-party service providers or bureaus used by the DTC, used by participants to connect to DTC. So basically, the imminent threat could be the result of a system disruption or cyber incident applicable to the DTCC systems participants. It allows them to react quickly whenever these events take place. It almost seems like they're foreshadowing some kind of cyber incident or system disruption, whatever that may be. So basically, they're consolidating everything to allow DTC to act quickly in the event that we go tits up. It's basically DTCC-2021 as cover. They're applying a uniform standard to all participants for confidential information. And they're adding a disconnect rule that allows DTC to pull the plug on anyone that could result in DTC facing a threat of system failure. And a cyber attack is brought up. So, basically, they want all the control, all the authority to declare a participant a threat to the system and an event, a disruption event, allowing them to basically have their way with anyone using their services. They're basically playing duck hunt right now, and they have the gun. This is what this filing's for. And we'll know within 45 days if they'll approve or disapprove it. So it should be published in the Fed Register, I believe, hopefully sometime next week. So whenever we see the release on the Fed Register, it'll be 45 days from that day that we should have an approval or not. So again, this one's pretty crazy. DTC is anticipating something, so it's clear in the language. Hang in there, everyone.